Tonight, we step softly into a medieval castle in the depth of winter. There is no urgency here. Nothing you need to memorize. Nothing you need to solve. This is simply a quiet journey into the past. The great hall has already settled into stillness. Long wooden tables stand empty. The fire in the hearth has burned lower, glowing in soft amber tones against the stone. Beyond the thick outer walls, winter air moves slowly across the courtyard. You might imagine frost gathering along wooden doors, or moonlight resting quietly on the towers above. Inside, the air feels cool, but calm, and within these stone walls, people are preparing for sleep, not with central heating, not with electric light, but with careful routines shaped over centuries. So how did they sleep here without freezing? The answer is quieter than you might expect. The castle does not hurry. Its walls have stood through many winters before this one. Generations have passed through these corridors, each one learning in their own quiet way how to live with the seasons rather than resist them. If you were walking here now, your footsteps might echo gently against the stone floor. The sound would not be sharp, just steady, measured. Perhaps a faint scent of smoke lingers in the air. Not harsh, but familiar. Wood burned earlier in the evening, when the hall was still alive with quiet conversation and shared meals. Now, only embers remain, and the cold outside presses softly against the outer walls, never quite reaching the small spaces people prepare for themselves inside. There is no urgency here, only rhythm. Winter outside, warmth gathered carefully within, and soon sleep. The answer is quieter than you might expect. Medieval castles were built first for protection. Their walls were thick, sometimes several feet wide, constructed from heavy stone designed to withstand attack. But stone does something important in winter. It absorbs and holds the temperature around it. During cold months, that meant the interior air remained cool, especially at night. Windows were often narrow. In earlier castles, they were little more than slits, designed for defense rather than sunlight. High ceilings in great halls allowed smoke from large fires to rise upward. But warm air rises too, so even when a fire burned, much of its heat drifted above the level where people actually lived and slept. And yet, people adapted. Instead of trying to make the entire castle warm, they learned to make one small space warm enough. That space was the bed. In a private chamber, a large wooden bed stands raised slightly above the stone floor. It is framed by 4 posts and draped with heavy fabric. This is not decoration. When the curtains are drawn closed, they create a smaller world inside the room. A pocket of still air protected from drafts. Within that enclosed space, body heat gathers gently. The bedding itself is layered carefully. A linen sheet rests closest to the skin, breathable and smooth. Above it, thick wool blankets. Wool was widely used across medieval Europe because it retains warmth even in cool, damp conditions. Sometimes a fur coverlet rests on top, adding another layer of insulation. Beneath, mattresses may be filled with feathers or straw, both of which trap air and slow the movement of cold. Even the raised bed frame serves a purpose. Cold air settles lower to the ground. By lifting the sleeping surface, people avoided the coldest layer of air in the room. Each detail is subtle, but together They create something effective, not luxury as we know it, but warmth enough for rest. Imagine the feeling of pulling heavy curtains closed around the bed. The fabric falls softly. It blocks the faint draft that lingers near the walls. Inside, the air feels different almost immediately. Still, held, contained. You might run your hand across the linen sheet. It feels cool at first touch, but not for long. Wool blankets rest above, slightly textured, dense with warmth waiting to be gathered. If there is fur, it carries a subtle weight, reassuring rather than heavy. Even the mattress beneath shifts gently as someone settles into place. Feathers compress. Straw rustles softly. The sounds are small, comforting. Within this enclosed space, the vast stone chamber fades from awareness. The castle may be large, but the sleeping space is small, and small spaces are easier to warm, easier to protect, easier to trust. Over time, this routine becomes instinctive. Curtains drawn, layers arranged, cold managed, not defeated, just managed. Before climbing into bed, preparation begins. In wealthier households, a servant might carry a bed warmer, a metal pan attached to a long handle filled with glowing embers from the hearth. The pan is passed slowly between the sheets, not to make them hot, only to remove the sharp chill. In other rooms, stones or bricks are placed near the fire during the evening meal. Later, they are wrapped in cloth and positioned near the foot of the bed. The goal is simple. Take the edge off the cold. Fireplaces in private chambers were usually smaller than those in the great hall. Fuel required labor, and fires were not meant to blaze through the entire night. So warmth becomes part of a rhythm. Warm the bed. Draw the curtains closed. Let the fire dim. Allow quiet to settle. Predictable, unhurried, comforting in its repetition. The warming pan moves slowly across the sheets, back and forth, never rushed. The glow inside it pulses softly, orange fading to deeper red. When the embers are removed, a trace of warmth remains behind. Not dramatic, not intense, just enough to make the first moments in bed gentle rather than sharp. These small preparations repeat each night in winter, predictable, reliable. There is comfort in repetition. The body begins to recognize the sequence. Warm the bed, close the curtains, lower the fire, lie down, breathe, and slowly let go. Sleeping arrangements were often communal by modern standards. Married couples shared beds. Children frequently slept together. Servants commonly rested near kitchens, where warmth from cooking fires lingered in stone and brick. Shared body heat was practical. It was normal. Clothing also played a role. Many people slept in long linen garments. In colder months, some wore simple caps to reduce heat loss. These were small adjustments, but layered together, fabric, fur, feathers, shared warmth. They formed a system that allowed sleep to arrive, even within stone walls. Now imagine the final moments before rest. The curtains are drawn closed. The room beyond fades into shadow. Inside the bed, warmth slowly gathers. The linen softens against the skin. The wool grows warmer with each breath. The fire in the hearth dims further, its light flickering gently against the walls. Outside, the wind continues its quiet movement along the battlements. But inside this small enclosed space, there is stillness. The castle itself may remain cool, yet within this carefully prepared refuge, warmth is enough. Night after night, winter after winter. This is how people slept in medieval castles without freezing, not by conquering the cold, but by working patiently around it. Before the curtains were drawn completely, a single candle often remained, tallow most commonly, made from rendered animal fat. Humble, practical, and slow burning. Its flame was small. It cast just enough light to see the room settle into shadow. The stone walls, the carved bedpost, the outline of a shutter against the window. Then, when the moment felt right, it was extinguished, sometimes with a breath, sometimes with a small metal cone designed only for that purpose. And with it, the last visual connection to the waking world went dark. The room became shapes and outlines, then nothing at all, just warmth and quiet and the slow sound of breathing. Before the bed was prepared each evening, something else was tended to quietly. Dried herbs, lavender, rosemary, chamomile, were often tucked into bedding or scattered near sleeping areas. Not for luxury, for practical reasons. Herbs helped mask the heavy, close smell of a stone room in winter. They discouraged insects. They made the air feel softer somehow. A small thing, but it mattered. The act of preparing the bed was not rushed. It was deliberate. Lavender pressed between wool folds. A sprig of rosemary near the pillow. These quiet details were part of the same careful system. Small decisions that made the difference between rest and restlessness. Within the curtained bed, the world grows very small. But if you listen carefully, the castle still breathes around you. Somewhere far below, a guard makes his slow rounds along the outer wall. His footsteps are unhurried, steady, a rhythm that is repeated night after night for years. The fire pops softly. A timber settles somewhere in the floor above. Wind finds its way around the towers and releases a long, low sound. Not alarming, more like a sigh. These were the familiar sounds of a winter night in stone. Not silence exactly, but a kind of company. The castle communicating in its own quiet language. And somehow, that made the stillness feel safer. There is something worth pausing on, the weight of the blankets themselves. Modern bedding is often designed to feel light. Medieval bedding was not. Thick wool pressed down with a gentle, steady weight. Fur coverlets added more. For many people, that heaviness was part of falling asleep. A physical reminder that the body was still, that the work of the day was finished, that nothing more was required. The weight said, "You may rest now," and the body listened. In many households, animals shared the warmth of the interior. Hunting dogs were permitted in chambers. Large, calm creatures that had worked alongside their owners since morning. A dog curled at the foot of the bed added something practical. Weight against the feet, warm through thick fur, a steady, slow breathing. It was ordinary, natural. The presence of another living thing making the coal feel a little further away. Even in grander chambers, this was not considered unusual. People and animals had always shared shelter in winter. The bed curtains stayed closed. The dogs settled, and the night continued its slow, quiet progress. Not everyone retired to a curtained bed with layered furs. Servants slept where warmth was most available, near the kitchens, where stone had absorbed heat from fires burning all day. In the great hall, closer to the hearth, wrapped in cloaks and rough wool. Some slept in small groups, bodies close together, sharing what warmth they had. A bundle of straw beneath them, a single heavy blanket above. It was enough. Not comfortable in the way we might imagine, but sufficient. The body, given shelter and stillness, finds rest even in modest conditions. This too was part of castle life in winter. Not just the chambers of the wealthy, but every quiet corner where a person could lie down and close their eyes. As the night moved past its midpoint, the fire had little left to offer, just embers now. The room beyond the curtains had grown darker and still, but within the layered wool and linen, warmth had settled in fully. The body had found its temperature. The mind had released the day, its labor, its cold, its noise. There was no clock to watch, no hour to calculate. Time in a medieval winter night was simply the dark moving slowly toward dawn, and people slept within it as they always had, without resistance, without urgency, surrendering to the night the way the fields outside had surrendered to frost, completely, quietly. There is something historians have noted quietly about medieval sleep. It did not always follow a single, unbroken arc through the night. Many people slept in two distinct periods. A first sleep, deep and long, beginning not long after dark. Then a waking period in the middle of the night, brief and calm, perhaps tending to the fire, lying still in thought, sometimes speaking softly to someone nearby. Then a second sleep, carrying through until first light. This was not considered unusual. It was simply the rhythm of the night, a natural pattern that followed the long winter dark. And within the curtained bed, wrapped in wool and warmth, that waking interval felt gentle rather than disruptive. Just another part of the night unfolding at its own pace. Somewhere above, the watchman on the tower had not moved in some time. His breath rose in small clouds against the winter sky. Stars, if the clouds had parted, would have been extraordinarily clear. No lanterns below, no distant glow from a neighboring town. Just cold, open darkness above the walls. Inside the great hall had grown fully still, the long tables empty, the rushes on the floor undisturbed, the last ember in the central hearth dimming toward grey. Room by room the castle had gone quiet, storerooms cool and dark, the chapel empty, its candles long since out, the stables warm with the breathing of horses, the whole place resting together, stone and timber and creature and person, all of it folded into the same deep winter night. Deep in the final hours before light, the castle reached its coldest point. Stone holds the cold the way it holds everything, patiently, thoroughly. But by now, sleep had already done its work. Dreams, if they came, moved slowly through the quiet. Somewhere, a single candle had long since burned out. The last warmth of the bed warmer had faded hours ago, yet the layered refuge remained. Wool, linen, curtains drawn, the body content in its small, protected world. Outside, frost had settled over the courtyard. The towers stood silent against a deep winter sky, and inside, the sleeping figures barely stirred, held gently by warmth they had prepared with their own hands, resting completely as people had done for centuries before them. And perhaps tonight, quietly and without announcement, it has begun to snow. No sound at first, just the soft weight of it gathering on the battlements, covering the courtyard in slow, even layers. The world outside the walls growing quieter still, softer, as if the snow itself were part of the night's intention, to muffle, to still, to slow everything down until only rest remained. Inside no one knows yet. The curtains are drawn, the fire is nearly out, but by morning the courtyard will be white. The towers will wear a thin layer of cold and quiet, and someone will rise, pull back a shutter, and look out at a changed world. But that is morning, and morning is still far away. For now, there is only this: the snow falling, the castle breathing, and somewhere within the stone walls, the steady warmth of sleep. The chapel in the dark. At the far end of the castle, a small chapel stands in complete stillness. No one is there now. The last prayer of the evening was spoken hours ago. A brief, quiet ritual, observed before the household retired. Words said not loudly, but carefully, as if the stone walls themselves were listening. A single votive candle may still be burning, small and steady in the dark. Its flame does not flicker much here. The air in the chapel is very still, protected from drafts by thick walls and a heavy door pulled almost shut. The flame simply burns, patient and unhurried, casting a faint amber glow across carved stonework, across a wooden cross, across the cold, smooth surface of a simple altar. In the medieval world, the boundary between the physical and the spiritual was not considered distant. The chapel was not separate from daily life. It was woven into it. Morning prayers, evening prayers, the marking of seasons, the acknowledgement that the day had come and gone, and that tomorrow was not guaranteed. And so even in sleep, the castle held this small flame, not as ceremony, simply as habit, as comfort, a reminder that the night, however long and cold, was being held by something larger than stone walls and wool blankets. The candle burns on, the chapel stays quiet, and the rest of the castle sleeps around it. Across the courtyard, now covered in a thin layer of new snow, the stables hold their own kind of warmth. Several horses stand in their stalls. They do not sleep the way people do. They rest standing, shifting their weight slowly from side to side. Their breath comes in long, steady rhythms that fog the cold air around their heads. The smell of hay is strong here, warm and earthy. A stable boy, young and exhausted from the day's work, has curled into a corner on a pile of straw, a rough wool blanket pulled up to his chin. His breathing has already slowed into sleep. The horses are company enough. Their presence fills the space with sound, the soft movement of hooves on packed earth, the occasional deep exhale, the quiet settling of large bodies finding rest. A cat moves silently along the top of a stall divider. It pauses, considers, then folds itself down into a tight curl and closes its eyes. Outside, snow continues to fall. But here, among animals and hay and old timber, the temperature is several degrees warmer than the open air. Bodies generate heat. Hay holds it. The stable has its own insulation, its own quiet ecosystem of warmth. The stable boy does not wake. The horses breathe. The cat does not move. And the snow gathers silently on the roof above them all. The walls of this castle have stood through many winters, more than any single person within them can count. Stone has a kind of memory if you consider it slowly. Every fire that was ever lit in the great hall has left something behind. A faint darkening above the hearth, a smoothness worn into the stone where hands rested over centuries. The floor of the corridor outside the main chamber has been walked so many thousands of times that the center of each stone step has worn slightly concave. Small hollows shaped entirely by the passage of feet. People who rose early to begin work. People who walked quietly to avoid waking others. People who climbed these stairs for the very last time without knowing it. All of it held in stone. The walls have absorbed heat and released it, absorbed cold and released that too. Season after season, year after year, decade after decade. They do not keep warmth easily, but they remember everything. The marks left by torches along the corridor walls, the worn patch beside a doorway where a hand reached for the latch 10,000 times. The shallow groove in a windowsill where someone sat often enough to leave their shape behind. These are quiet things, invisible unless you know to look, but they are there. And tonight, as the castle sleeps and snow falls and candles go dark one by one, the stone holds all of it without effort, patient, indifferent to cold, still standing, still remembering. Earlier today, the kitchen was the loudest room in the castle, the most alive. Fires burning high, the sound of chopping, the smell of roasting meat and boiling broth. Voices, movement, the constant business of feeding a household. Now it is quiet. The large cooking fire has been banked for the night, reduced but not fully extinguished. Embers glow beneath a layer of ash, kept alive deliberately so that morning preparation can begin quickly without having to start from nothing. Iron pots hang still on their hooks. A long wooden table holds the remnants of the evening's work. A cloth draped over a cutting board, a ladle resting across the edge of a ceramic bowl. The stone floor here is warmer than anywhere else in the castle. It has absorbed a full day of heat. 2 kitchen workers sleep nearby, not in chambers, but on low pallets close to the warmth. Their sleep is deep and immediate. The labor of their day does not leave much room for lying awake. By the time the household rises, these fires will be rebuilt. Bread will already be baking. The kitchen will be loud again. But for now, it simply rests, warm and still and smelling faintly of everything that was made here today. The embers pulse gently beneath the ash, patient, waiting for morning. In a small chamber not far from the main bedroom, children sleep. They are not spread out across individual beds the way we might imagine. They are close together, several of them curled beneath a single large wool blanket. Their bodies instinctively turn toward each other even in sleep. a shared warmth that requires no thought, no decision, simply the natural arrangement of small people in a cold stone room. One of them has pulled the blanket almost entirely to their side. The others have not stirred. Their breathing is slow and synchronized in the way that sleeping children's breathing often becomes, as if the body finds its rhythm and then holds it without effort. A carved wooden toy rests on the floor near the bed. A small boot sits sideways where it was pulled off without care. Outside their window, the snow is still falling. But the room is not aware of this. It is only warm breath and heavy blankets and the uncomplicated sleep of the young. The kind of sleep that arrives quickly and holds completely until morning light finds its way through the shutter and makes further sleep impossible. For now, though, the light is still far away. The children sleep on, tangled together, warm enough, completely still. Not everyone in the castle is asleep. On the outer wall, a watchman walks his slow circuit. His footsteps are muffled now by the thin layer of snow that has gathered on the stone walkway. He wears a thick wool cloak pulled tight at the collar. Beneath it, layers, a linen shirt, a heavier tunic, wool over that. His hands are covered. His head is covered. Still, the cold finds the edges, the tip of his nose, the skin around his eyes. He does not resist it. After years of this work, the cold is simply part of the night, something to move through rather than something to fight. He stops at the corner tower and looks out across the landscape below. The fields are white now. The road that leads away from the castle gates is barely visible, lost beneath fresh snow. The tree line in the distance stands dark and still. No movement, no light, nothing that requires attention. He breathes out slowly and watches his breath dissolve into the dark air. Then he turns and continues his circuit, unhurried, steady. His presence is the only movement on the wall, the only waking eyes in this corner of the winter night. Below him, the castle sleeps. Above him, the snow continues to fall. And he walks on, one measured step at a time, as watchmen have walked these walls for as long as the castle has stood. There is a particular smell to a castle in deep winter. It is difficult to name precisely. Cold stone first, a mineral, almost earthy quality that never fully leaves these walls regardless of how many fires are lit. Wood smoke settled into every surface, into the tapestries and the curtains and the timber beams overhead. Not unpleasant, just present, the way the smell of any lived-in place becomes simply the smell of that place. Beneath that, wool, the particular warmth of it, when a body has been wrapped in it for hours, and underneath everything, faintly, the outside, winter air moving through the narrow gaps around shutters and under heavy doors, carrying with it the clean, almost metallic smell of snow and frozen ground. These smells do not compete. They settle together. They become the atmosphere of a winter night in this place, as recognizable to the people who live here as the smell of their own homes. There is comfort in familiar smells. The body recognizes them before the mind does. They signal, this is known, this is safe. You have been here before and woken again, and so they become part of falling asleep, not noticed, simply absorbed. The smell of cold stone and old wood and winter air saying quietly, without words, you are home. You may rest. Along the stone corridor outside the main chambers, tapestries hang against the walls. They were not placed there purely for decoration. Fabric against stone reduces drafts. It slows the movement of cold air through a corridor. It gives the wall something softer to offer than bare stone. But they are also beautiful. Even in the dark, their shapes are faintly visible. Scenes woven in thread that took skilled hands months to produce. Hunting scenes, perhaps, or formal gatherings, or geometric patterns repeated across wide panels. During the day, these colors are deep and rich. At night, they are simply shapes and shadows. But they are there, and they hold something of the day in them. A record of craft and care, of people choosing to make their world more than purely functional. Even in a place built first for defense, someone decided that the walls should hold color, that the corridors should feel less cold. That beauty had a place even here, even in winter, even in the deep quiet of the night. The tapestries hang still. No draft moves them now. The corridor is silent, and their colors wait patiently for morning. There is a particular hour in the middle of a long winter night that has no easy name. Too late to call it evening. Too early to call it morning. It simply is. A deep, still point in the turning of the night. The watchman has made his rounds. The stable boy has not stirred. The kitchen embers have settled lower. The chapel candle has burned down to almost nothing. Even the wind, which moved quietly along the battlements earlier in the night, has gone still. The snow has stopped falling, and the world outside the castle walls is absolutely, completely silent. No cart on the road, no animal in the field, no voice, no wind, just the cold and the dark and the white ground holding the impression of falling snow. Inside, the same silence has reached its fullest depth. Every breath is slow. Every body is still. The castle exists in this hour as it has existed in thousands of such hours before. Simply standing, simply holding its people, simply enduring the cold with the patience of stone. Nothing is required of anyone right now. Nothing at all. This is the hour that belongs entirely to rest, and it passes, the way all hours do, without hurry, without announcement, simply becoming the next hour and then the next. The night moving forward by degrees, so slowly that no one inside these walls could feel it happening. Only the stars, if you were watching from outside, would tell you that time was moving at all. Morning is still some way off, but it will come. It always does, even after the longest winter nights. The first sign will be the sky above the eastern tower. A darkness that slowly becomes less dark. Not light yet, just a gradual, almost imperceptible change in the quality of the black. Then slowly, a deep blue, then grey, then the shape of clouds becoming visible against a pale sky. The watchman on the wall will notice it first. He always does, and he will feel, perhaps, the particular relief that comes after a long, cold, uneventful watch. The knowledge that the night has passed without incident, that the hours were ordinary, that the castle stands exactly as it did when darkness fell. In the kitchen, the first person to rise will stir the banked embers back to life. It will not take long. The heat is still there, waiting beneath the ash. A few careful breaths, a handful of kindling, and the fire will return. The smell of wood smoke will begin its slow movement through the corridors. Then the sound of activity, building gradually, footsteps, voices, the ordinary sounds of a household waking. But all of that is still ahead. Right now, morning is only a promise, an approaching thing still distant enough that there is no need to think about it, no need to prepare. The night still holds, the castle is still quiet, and the last, deepest hours of rest are still unfolding, slowly, completely, without interruption. Now the castle is fully quiet. The last movements of the evening have settled into stillness. Within the curtained bed, warmth has gathered slowly, almost unnoticed. The linen no longer feels cool. The wool has adjusted. Breathing becomes steady. Outside, the winter wind continues its patient movement along the walls and towers. But inside this small enclosed space, there is only softness. The fire in the hearth has burned low. Its final embers pulse faintly, glowing, dimming, glowing again. Stone walls hold their silence. The ceiling above disappears into shadow. There is no need to think about the size of the castle. No need to consider the cold outside. Within these layered fabrics, warmth is enough. And for centuries, that was enough. Night after night, season after season, people lay within these small protected spaces and allowed sleep to arrive gradually, not because conditions were perfect, but because preparation created comfort. The body does not require perfection, only steadiness, only rhythm, only enough warmth to feel safe. You might imagine the curtains gently enclosing you now, the fabric soft against quiet air, the world outside dim and distant, nothing urgent, nothing required, only rest. The wind continues its slow movement beyond thick stone walls. The embers fade a little further, and inside this small pocket of warmth, breathing slows, thoughts soften. The castle remains standing, steady, unmoving. Winter passing quietly around it, and within its walls, sleep